First, I just wanted to say I know there is a tropical storm projected to be a hurricane headed towards more parts of Florida. Already been through the Keys and some other places in the Caribbean. So just prayers for folks and calm and breath for folks who aren't in the path. And if you're a Floridian, you know what to do. And if you're not Floridian, ask what, and you'll get through yet another storm. Seems an apt metaphor, but I was thinking this week there has been a lot floating around the interweb and social media and just various conversations around what Jesus' priority. People aren't really saying it that way, but they're sort of using their Christian faith or the Bible to justify certain behaviors and kind of make these claims about Jesus' priority, about what it all means, about who people should be and shouldn't be, about how we should act and shouldn't act, etc., etc. So I just figured I'd point to a couple places where Jesus says what his priorities are. And I've had people quote Paul at me, and I'm like, well, Paul's cool, man, but Paul's not Jesus. So let's look back to what Jesus said. So just anyone who's curious, if anyone has found themselves confused as they hear some of the things going on around what Scripture says, who God is, who Jesus is, etc., I really encourage you to look to the Sermon on the Mount. A lot of talk about the Ten Commandments lately. A lot of talk about various laws and decrees within the Old Testament. Again, Paul, who wrote a lot of the New Testament. But I really think if you want to know the best record of what Jesus believed was important, you've got to look at the Sermon on the Mount, and you've got to look at who he spent his time with and the things that he said. So by and large, that is, the meek, the peacemakers. He talks about those poor in spirit. He talks about, various classes, hungry, the thirsty, who he spent his time with, the tax collectors, which in that time were sort of the most hated people in society because they went around collecting money for Rome, who would eventually crucify him, honestly. And the sex workers, he spent his time with sex workers, and not judging them and condemning them and telling them they were going to go to hell, but instead loving them and including them and asking other people to listen to them and allow them to be. So when you're going to talk about who Jesus is, especially in this particular scenario I'm thinking of, I was told that Jesus said to follow the law of the land. That was never a thing Jesus said. The closest maybe was give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and the reality is in this day and age what that would mean is, what are they asking for? What does the government want from you? Money, greed, support, these kind of things. But when Jesus told us how to live and act, he said include the immigrant, welcome them, feed them, house them, give them something to drink, because as you do unto them, you do unto me. These are the kind of things that Jesus said. Whoever is being ostracized and left out and persecuted for who they are and what they believe, that's who Jesus says is basically going to inherit the kingdom of heaven. So it seems to me that the primary message is grace and love, that those were Jesus's priorities. So as you look around you as we enter a political season, or are firmly implanted in it, as you look around you and look to your family members, to your neighbors, as you look at sort of the social global landscape, if you want to know where Jesus is at, if you want to know what Jesus' priorities were, in Scripture over and over again, it's with the people on the margins, with those excluded, with those others hate, and is all shrouded in grace and love. May that reorient each of our compasses as we attempt to be more and more like Jesus. Grace and peace, friend.